everybody, and welcome to the third installment of our Day of the Beast Call of Cthulhu video log. Today's episode is entitled Black Hills Blackest Secrets, which is also the name of the second adventure in the campaign. In this adventure, the investigators travel to South Dakota to investigate strange goings-on and strange deaths at NWI's Windy Point mining compound. They are contacted by Kevin Norbridge, who had been talking to his friend Robert Carrington, whom the investigators helped in the previous episode called Suffer Little Children, and Robert Carrington has recommended them. So basically this is the connection, and this is how the investigators get contacted. The background to the whole story is that several hundred years ago, a group of insects from Shagai, also called Shan, crashed with their spaceship in South Dakota and have not been able to restart their engine. It's a nuclear reactor engine, and for this they need uranium. Now, the insects from Shagai are actually teeny tiny critters that cannot do any mining themselves. And so when NWI start mining for uranium in the area, the insects exploit this possibility, and what they do is they infest the miners' brains, nest in the brains and mind control them to get the uranium shipped to their spaceship, which is hidden in a cave in the hills. The investigators need to do a couple of things. Number one, they need to find out what's going on with the miners. When they arrive there, they will find a lot of sick miners, and this is where probably a lot of metagaming will ensue, because the description of the sickness is, to someone in the 21st century, quite clear. It describes radiation poisoning. Of course, back then in 1927, radiation poisoning was known to some people, but not to the wider public. So you will have to allow for some metagaming there, unless you happen to have a medical person in the team who has specialized in radiation, which is quite unlikely. They then also have to find out where the radiation comes from, because it's not the uranium itself that's low grade and it's not very high in radiation, but it's the actual nuclear reactor from the Shan. How to confine the radiation and the Shan, and basically also solve the infestation problem. So when the investigators arrive, they are met by Scott Wallace, who's the second in command, and he picks them up at the train station and takes them to Windy Point. Windy Point compound was set up by NWI, so there's just basically a couple of ramshackle buildings, barracks for sleeping, administration buildings, one stable, and also a couple of houses where equipment can be stored, a little general store, and a pub, and an infirmary where the sick people are. When they arrive, they find that Kevin Norbridge is dead. It seems like he has killed himself driving a pickaxe into his forehead. There's blood all over the place. There is a strange drawing in his office behind his back, and it's drawn in chalk. And the investigators, of course, start investigating straight away. They check out the office, they find different clues. They can also establish that Mr. Norbridge has obviously killed himself. Of course, they have to do a couple of rolls to establish this. If they fail the rolls, then they walk away with less knowledge. And also, that's basically the end of the first day, because they arrive quite late. So in the first night, they sleep in a guest cabin. And this is when you, as the keeper, can do the first piece of mischief. You can actually infest one of the investigators with a Shan, which is what I did, and it actually led to quite a lot of funny goings-on. During the next day, the investigators will talk to different people in the camp. They will find out that there is a very interesting Indian reservation nearby. There used to be Indian workers at the compound, but as soon as things started to go wrong, the Indians were the first to leave. So they can either go to the reservation or they can talk to the miners and then end up in shaft A28, which is where some problems have happened and some people have died as well. My group decided to go to Pine Ridge Reservation first, where they meet Tommy Morningstar, who is the local medicine man who knows about the Shan. They have been in the area for several hundred years. The Cheyenne are aware of them. They had infested some of the Cheyenne's enemies, who the Cheyenne then later on defeated, and he teaches the investigators a song, which is in fact a spell called Repel Shan, that will destroy, well, it will basically numb the Shan, and they will fall to the ground because they're kind of flying insects, and when you sing to them they will actually fall to the ground. You can just stamp on them and they will die. If one of your investigators is infected, Tommy Morningstar will know so right away, and he will use the song to get the Shan out of this person's brain. This is actually something really ugly to behold, because the Shan will crawl out of the person's nose or ear. And in my case, of course, I did have an infected investigator, so the Shan is repelled. It leaves. It left. It's actually Rosalind who was infected. It left Rosalind's brain, and Tommy just stepped on it, and it dies. Now, the investigators can learn the spell. Mine managed to learn the spell, but they never were able to use it, because whenever they used it, they failed the rolls. And then they left and went back to the village, the mining village, and they inspected shaft 828. And unfortunately, one of them fell to his death in the mine. It was Angelo Morales, which led to quite a lot of role-playing, especially since Angelo, being a medicine man himself, had struck up a really interesting relationship with Tommy Morningstar. And later on, the investigators go back to Tommy to talk to him, and there was a lot of role-playing that we could exploit there. And it was really, really interesting, and it was great fun, but it was also very immersive. The investigators then later on find the Shan cave, and they realize that the Shan only come out at night or in darkness. So as soon as you step into the cave and you leave the light, the Shan will attack you. So there was some fighting. They didn't manage to cast the spell. Like I said, it didn't work. They failed the rolls. But basically they used their weapons and they shot some of the Shan, and they realized that if they went into the cave, they would actually get radiated, because they had decided that this being a mining compound where uranium was mined, there surely would have to be a Geiger counter. I had to make a decision there and then, because I didn't know if Geiger counters were available at the time. So I just decided, okay, let's do a luck roll. They were lucky, so there was one there. I later did do some research on this. Geiger counters weren't around in the 1927 era, so that's kind of like an anachronistic thing. But then I decided, okay, you have to make a decision as you play, and I wanted them to have this advantage, and so they decided not to walk into the cave, which is actually a trap. It says so in the book. It's a trap, and anyone who walks in, unless they are really, really, really lucky, will contract radiation poisoning and die. So the outcome was that they decided to confine the Shan by blowing up the cave. So they went back to the compound, got some dynamite. Sherman Abrams, being a mining engineer, managed to explode the place without destroying the whole area. So he basically just blew up the cave and made it collapse, rather than opening the top so that the Shan could all escape. So they managed to do this. They also basically explained what was going on. They solved the question of where did the uranium go and why were people radiated. They did not go into the cave, so they never saw the spaceship, but that's okay. It's not important. So they solved all of the questions. It was a very successful 2 sessions. It was a lot of immersion, and I actually liked this episode a lot, and I think it's really well written. The next session will be called The Thing in the Well. There are 2 other sessions that you could play between the Black Hills, Blackest Secrets. That's The Dreamer and A London Calling. I will tell you right away that I left out The Dreamer completely, and I'm going to go into why I did this in a wrap-up installment at the end of this whole campaign. And I decided to move London Calling, and I'm going to explain to you why in a later episode. So I can tell you one thing: Black Hill, Blackest Secrets is a fun episode to play, and it's very, very enjoyable and really well written. And I hope that if you play it, you will be just as happy as we were with it. Okay, thanks, bye.